It was weak, almost a whisper, carried on ancient frequencies and distorted by centuries of stellar drift. A fractured stream of desperate signals, layered in half-broken dialects and long-dead languages, finally reached Earth. It was not meant for them. The senders were gone. But the message, even degraded by time, still burned with urgency. The signal was flagged automatically by Earth's deep-range network, a lattice of orbital relays and probes that had watched the stars since the Reconstruction era. Most signals were noise. This one wasn't. What began as static unraveled into patterns overlapping languages, structured redundancy, recursive data loops clearly synthetic, clearly alien. United Nations of Earth Intelligence quarantined it. Experts parsed it. Linguists cross-referenced it. AI decrypted and stabilized the codec fragments. And for the first time in known history, Earth heard the full message of the Valoran Accord. The voices were many. Different throats, different species, all layered in shared terror. Transmissions bled into each other, screaming coordinates, casualty counts, names of fallen cities, names of entire species. There were pleading calls to any allied power, threats issued to their invaders, final messages to loved ones. The final loop, clearer than the rest, simply said, "If you hear this, they are already here. We are undone." No reply had ever been recorded. No investigation launched. According to galactic history logs, what little Earth had access to, the Valoran Accord had ceased to exist 4 centuries ago. Wiped from the star maps, its territory now under the unchallenged control of the Drakari Imperium. The Drakari, one of the oldest surviving empires in the known galaxy. Not builders, not philosophers, eradicators. Their dominance wasn't based on innovation or adaptation. It was fear. They were a species of professional warlords and imperial slaughterers, efficient, predictable, untouchable. Earth, until now, had been left alone. It wasn't always that way. When Earth broke the light-speed barrier and made first contact nearly a century ago, the galaxy had barely noticed. A minor world with a violent history and no unifying government, freshly unified only by mutual near extinction. Humanity had entered space quietly, cautiously. They built fast, but they built quietly. Let the older species laugh, let them ignore. That suited Earth just fine, but this call was something else. UNA passed the decrypted signal to UNE, the United Nations of Earth Fleet Command. A session was convened. No politicians were invited. Only fleet commanders, analysts, and the AI systems integrated into Earth's defense grids. The debate lasted 27 minutes. The final vote was unanimous. Humanity would answer. They weren't coming to claim territory. There was no tactical benefit to this dead system. The Valoran Accord was gone. The message was 400 years too late. But they heard it, and that was enough. The orders went out. Orbital shipyards lit up. Automated facilities buried in the shadows of Saturn's rings awakened from deep sleep. Behemoth dreadnoughts with silent hulls, anti-sensor stealth geometry, and hull-mounted planetary torpedoes were pulled from long-term stasis. Hundreds of vessels, from patrol corvettes to gravity-tied warships, activated. Civilian news outlets weren't briefed. This was not a political operation. The fleet's mission was recorded in a one-line internal directive: "We go where no one else did." At Luna Command, the supercarrier Arclight was armed for its first deployment in 50 years. Its Valor 9, freshly cinched with its human command crew, ran combat simulations at 0.2 picoseconds per cycle. They all ended the same way: victory, at the edge of the solar system. Ghost frigates black-hulled, AI piloted, capable of entering folded slipspace, at will initiated reconnaissance runs. They didn't wait for orders. They had already calculated likely Drakari response vectors. The fleet assembled in silence. It had been over a century since humanity deployed in full strength. The last time, it was to prevent a civil war on Europa. The time before that, to prevent an extinction event on Mars, caused by a runaway terraforming engine. But this mission was different. This wasn't defense. It was doctrine when the last vessel synced with the fleet's navigational AI spine. A final data packet was transmitted to the Galactic Communication Nexus. It was brief. Coordinates, mission type, classified. Species of origin, Terran, no request for permission. No request for alliance. Humanity wasn't asking. They jumped in stages, space warping around them as slipspace corridors bent to the fleet's command. Algorithms. The lid dreadnoughts shredded gravity wakes behind them, riding pulses of collapsed spacetime like arrows shot through the void. Transit time, 39 hours Galactic Standard. Destination, the Valoran system. They arrived to silence. No distress. Signal greeted them now. Only debris. The Valoran sun was dimmer than expected, its light occluded by clouds of pulverized metal and rock. The system had once held 6 inhabited worlds. Only one remained intact, a frozen shell. Atmosphere stripped, its surface scarred. By orbital strikes, UNEF sensors confirmed it. 0 signs of life. The destruction was not from civil war. No resistance movements, no internal collapse. This had been extermination. Fleet Commander Rilland stood on the command deck of the Arclight, staring at the planet through filtered glass. He gave no order. None were needed. Every vessel knew what to do. Surveillance swarms were deployed to scan for archival data. Electromagnetic archaeology pulling memory shards from ruined satellites and burned server clusters buried deep in planetary crust. One by one, they reconstructed fragments of the Valoran civilization. Poems, children's songs, educational hallas. A partial map of their trade routes. Names etched into crystal monuments now shattered and buried under radioactive dust. Humanity archived it all. Not for analysis. Not for technology. For memory. The monument construction protocol began without ceremony. At the third planet's orbit, human engineering drones assembled a zero-gravity spire from repurposed debris. Its central beacon would play the last broadcast of the Valoran Accord. Once every galactic cycle, we are undone, but we lived. No signal was broadcast from the fleet. No declarations, no threats. Not yet, but across dozens of listening posts spread among neutral systems and Drakari-controlled sectors, sensor arrays blinked to life. Someone was in the Valoran system, and they didn't match any known transponder. Codes. The Terrans had arrived, and they hadn't come to talk. The Drucker response came faster than expected. Within 6 hours of the human fleet's arrival in the Valoran system, long-range sensors picked up movement from the edges of the sector. Not patrols. Not scouts, warfleets. 10 distinct battle groups. Traveling in staggered formations, utilizing gravitational null space folds and mass shadow camouflage. The same method they'd used centuries ago to erase the Valoran Accord. But this time, they weren't the only ones who knew how. The Terran fleet didn't retreat. They didn't respond. They waited. Drakari doctrine was built on overwhelming force and psychological dominance. Hit fast. Hit first. Leave nothing standing. The presence of an unknown armada in what was essentially Drakari-claimed space was already a violation of their sacred dominance. That this fleet remained idle, unmoved by standard intimidation tactics, sent the first ripple of uncertainty through their command structure. Fleet Commander Rilland watched from the Arclights. Observation matrix, silent as ever. On every deck, every vessel, every system AI and human minds alike calculated Drakari formations, not with fear, with curiosity. Earth had trained for this, even if no one in the galaxy knew it. For decades, Earth's military doctrine had been hidden beneath bureaucracy and civilian-first policies. Peaceful on the surface, cooperative with allies, quiet But beneath the skin, Earth was steel. Their simulations had run every known alien fleet through worst-case engagement protocols. Drukhari formations had been dissected, torn apart in theoretical models, reverse-engineered to the level of cultural weakness. So when the Drukhari battlegroups arrived in full 8 capital ships, 30 cruisers, and hundreds of smaller interceptors, the Terrans were not surprised that they were ready. The first attack wave came from the Drukhari flanks expected, clocked, and countered before the enemy was in weapons range. Human ghost frigates had deployed remote AI-piloted decoy fields mimicking fleet signatures, drawing the interceptors off course. Entire swarms of Drukhari fighters dove into traps, chasing sensor ghosts and landing in webs of hyper-mines. No warning. No taunt. Just fire. Human coil lances activated from concealed positions behind the moons of the 4th planet, their beams silent, invisible to most sensors, punching clean holes through Drukhari cruisers. One vessel, a Drukhari Stormbringer class battleship, was torn in half before it even locked weapons. The second wave attempted to regroup. They expected return fire. Retaliation. Some gesture of battle ritual. They got nothing. Not a single human voice spoke on open comms. No chance. No threats. Only raw, calculated silence as wave after wave of Terran fire destroyed their momentum. MP clusters detonated in synchronized arcs, shorting entire squadrons of Drukhari fighters. Kinetic spears, tungsten rods launched at relativistic speeds, punched through armor like tissue, turning Drukhari destroyers into drifting scrap. It wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. Inside the Arclight, command teams operated without urgency. Tactical AI Valor 9 relayed updates at post-verbal speeds, predicting Drukhari fleet maneuvers 6 seconds before they happened. For humans, that was eternity. For Earth's defense network, it was target practice. Drukhari Command finally broke protocol. An open broadcast was issued from their flagship. Their language was guttural, half growled, half screamed. But the meaning was clear even before the translators engaged. Identify yourselves, unknown fleet. State your claim and submit your allegiance, or be obliterated. No reply. Seconds passed. Then, at precisely the 6-second mark, Earth's calculated delay for psychological destabilization, Arclight transmitted a single word: received. That was all. No threat, no demand. Just acknowledgement. The Drukhari commander's reply came in furious roars. Demands for surrender, threats of reprisal, ritual declarations of ownership. Terran ships advanced. Not quickly, not recklessly. They moved with terrifying precision, slipping through Drukhari lines like blades through old cloth. The void lit with silent detonations. No dramatic energy bursts, no fancy plasma flares. Human weaponry was refined, efficient, quiet. The kind of quiet that meant something had ended. Drukhari losses climbed past 60% for the first time in known galactic warfare. The Drukhari champions of brutal efficiency retreated. Not far. Just enough to regroup, to reassess. But that sliver of hesitation shattered centuries of projected dominance. Across neutral systems, across the communication spines of smaller empires, one message spread in whispers. The Terrans pushed them back. It echoed louder with each transmission. 1,000 species who had watched their homeworlds burn under Drukhari fire now stared at screens showing Terran warships calmly occupying Forbidden's territory. Undamaged, still advancing. Back on. The Arclight, Commander Rilland issued his second and only order since entering the system. Mark every retreat vector. Don't pursue. The point had been made. The dead system of Velora was now occupied, not for conquest, not for expansion. For memory. Earth wasn't building colonies. They were building shrines. One for each fallen world. Monuments coded in every galactic language the Accord had once used. Quiet spires with encrypted records of culture, names, and histories. Voices the galaxy had forgotten. The Terrans were archiving the dead, and they were daring anyone to stop them. DRIKARI command couldn't allow it. Their entire empire functioned on unquestioned power. A single defeat, one left unanswered, could ripple across their territories, embolden resistance, invite rebellion. So they did what they always did. They gathered the Prime Fleet. Not a battle group, not a response unit. The Prime Fleet was the core of Drakari military strength, hundreds of warships, planet crackers, bioengineered hive carriers, vessels older than some civilizations, ships that had never lost a battle. Its arrival was scheduled. Within 48 hours, the countdown began. On Earth, the message leaked despite the blackout. Civilian networks caught the whisper. Humanity had gone to war, not for resources, not for expansion, for justice. For ghosts, reactions were mixed. Some were afraid, some outraged. But most felt what hadn't been felt in decades: purpose. Thousands volunteered for the fleet. Civilian engineers sent upgrade schematics unsolicited. Retired admirals offered counsel. AI clusters previously tasked with weather management reassigned themselves to strategic modeling. They weren't told to. No one asked. Earth simply knew. They were not fighting for territory. They were standing in a place where no one else had. Answering a call no one else had dared to, the fleet expanded. Reinforcements arrived. By the time the Drakari Prime Fleet breached the system edge, they didn't find a scattered human force. They found a wall, dozens more Terran ships, orbital artillery platforms, stealth satellites, minds smart enough to lie still and play dead, AI command cores that calculated enemy behavior faster than they could fire. No speech was given. No anthem played. The galaxy watched as Earth, long dismissed as primitive, positioned itself between an ancient empire and the forgotten ashes of a murdered alliance. No flag planted. No war declared. Only one unspoken message, felt in every system, every broadcast, every watching eye across the stars. This time, humanity heard the cry. And someone came. The Drakari Prime Fleet arrived in formation so vast it bent local gravity. Their flagship, a vessel the size of a small moon, cast a permanent eclipse over the Valoran system's only surviving world. Its hull bore scars from centuries of war, layered with ceremonial kill marks etched in molten alloys. No species had ever forced this fleet to deploy in full, until Earth. The Terrans did not flinch. Sensors registered the entry of 214 Drakari warships, 34 dread carriers, dozens of destroyers and fast-strike cruisers, 2 void-level annihilators, ancient relics capable of burning off a planet's biosphere in minutes. Every piece of Drakari prestige had entered the system at once, and the Terrans waited for them like a mirror. UNEF now fielded 116 ships, fewer in number, but not in capability. Each human vessel had been built for total warfare, autonomous targeting, adaptive shielding, redundant AI cores, kinetic dampeners, counter-AI logic loops. There were no decorative hulls, no insignia, just matte armor, silent engines, and weapons, meant to end battles before they began. The standoff stretched into hours. Drakari Command initiated psychological protocols. The first to speak wasn't a soldier, but a voice, a cultural emissary genetically bred to destabilize through speech. Alone. It spoke on open channels, projecting synthetic pheromonal pulses and subsonic aggression tones. It described Earth's history in cold detail, its wars, its genocides, its extinction events. It painted humanity as a self-hating, violent species, clinging to stolen technology and misguided sentiment. And still, the Terran said nothing. No reply. No correction. No attempt to justify their presence. They simply activated their relay beacons and began broadcasting the last words of the Valoran Accord. To everyone. UNEN. CRYPT. The cry for help. layered in languages long extinct, was looped through every come. Note in the system, over and over, "We are undone." "But we lived," the voice faltered. This wasn't war as the Drukhari knew it. There was no emotional display, no attempt to plead or threaten. Just cold precision and relentless purpose. The Terrans had no desire to conquer. They came to remember. And they were willing to kill for the right to do so. Drukhari honor required retaliation. Fleet Form Zeta was initiated. An envelopment pattern designed to crush smaller forces between three converging arms. Dozens of Drukhari ships moved into position. Engines glowing with bloodlight. Annihilators powered their main spines. Dread carriers deployed swarm-class missile barrages, blotting out space with clouds of seeker warheads. Terran AI Valor 9 initiated Defense Vector Sigma, the entire human. Fleet shifted formation in under 4 seconds. No shouted commands. No warning shots. Each Terran ship moved with perfect precision, creating kill boxes inside the Drukhari's own formation. Human cruisers, built for anti-swarm control, deployed counter-missile fractals. Each warhead split into hundreds of interceptors, forming lattice walls mid-space. Drukhari payloads detonated prematurely, chain reacting into their own lines. Kinetic torpedoes launched from stealth carriers hidden in orbital shadows. They bypassed shields using magnetogravitric phase drift technology the Drukhari had never seen. Hulls crumpled like paper. Power cores ruptured. The first 60 seconds cost the Drukhari 14 ships. The Terrans lost 0. Then came the Terran heavy strikes. Arclight-class dreadnoughts advanced in a slow wall, flanked by gravity-rigged drone ships. They didn't chase or swarm. They moved methodically, destroying anything in range without wasting a single round. AI-calculated shot timing maximized overpressure shockwaves, using Drukhari ship deaths to damage nearby allies. For every 1 Terran missile fired, 6 Drukhari ships died. When the Drukhari dread carriers retaliated, they found their fighters jammed, their targeting corrupted. Terran jamming drones projected false heat signatures, some shaped like friendly vessels, others mimicking Drukhari command ships. The Drukhari wasted thousands of munitions on phantoms. On the Arclight, Commander Rilland remained still, hands clasped behind his back. He watched the prime fleet unravel, not with satisfaction, but with certainty. Every movement, every decision, every vector had been anticipated. Humanity had been preparing for this fight for decades. Not openly, not proudly, but thoroughly. They had studied the Drukhari not to mimic them, but to dismantle them. And now, in real time, the oldest war machine in the galaxy was being taken apart by what they had dismissed as a primitive world. One Drukhari dread carrier broke formation, attempting retreat. It didn't get far. A Terran interceptor, no bigger than a scout pod, jumped into its slipstream and detonated a singularity core inside its propulsion ring. The explosion was quiet vacuum swallowed the sound, but every ship in the system saw the visual shockwave. The Drukhari called it what it was: fear. Dozens of their captains broke with formation protocol. Cohesion collapsed. A cascade failure of morale. Drukhari doctrine had no room for defeat, and now their veterans watched death approaching with no enemy to hate, no rage to cling to, only silence and efficient annihilation. In the final 10 minutes of combat, the Drukhari flagship issued a system-wide directive: full withdrawal. Not regroup. Not tactical fallback. Retreat. The word echoed across the system like blasphemy, and the Terrans let them go, not out of mercy, but because they had achieved what they came for. The Drukhari were beaten, and worse, they knew it. The surviving fleet limped into slipspace. Hundreds of ships entered panic jumps, scattering across the stars. Earth's ships did not pursue. The war wasn't over, but the lesson had been delivered. For the first time in galactic memory, the Drukhari had lost a battle so thoroughly, so undeniably, That no propaganda or cultural distortion could cover it up. Earth wasn't a footnote anymore. They were a force, and the galaxy noticed. Neutral powers began sending diplomatic probes, cautiously reaching out to this new superpower that had shattered the most feared empire in a single engagement. Small empires declassified old records, admitting they, too, had once received versions of the Valoran distress call and done nothing. Humanity had not forgotten. And now no one else could either. In the days following the battle, Terran ships spread across the Valoran system. Every ruin, every dead world was mapped and archived. Memorial satellites were launched in all directions, broadcasting restored voices from the Accord. Songs, speeches, memories. They would echo forever, across 1,000,000 star systems. New species listened to voices they'd never heard before. Voices of civilizations lost long before they were born. Because humanity had recovered them and stood watch over them, not conquerors. Custodians. For now, Earth's fleet remained in the Valoran system, silent, immovable. But every empire, every species, every warlord with delusions of superiority had seen what happened when Earth decided to answer a call. No request on no plea, just a message carried by warships, more deadly than legend. And every star system whisper now said the same thing. If you send a distress call and Earth hears it, someone is coming. The Valoran system stayed quiet, but its silence had changed. Once, it was the stillness of death, a graveyard orbiting forgotten stars. Now it held a different gravity, a warning, a promise. Earth's fleet remained in high orbit, not moving, not expanding, simply watching. They had won the battle, but conquest was never the objective. They were not there to plant flags or seize territory. They were there to protect a memory that the galaxy had buried too quickly. And across that galaxy, things began to shift. On the edge of Calithian space, a mid-tier species that had once paid tribute to the Drukhari received their first transmission. From Earth, it wasn't a demand, it wasn't a declaration. It was a record, archived, translated excerpt from Valoran poetry, recovered from an ancient orbital fragment. One stanza, one song, wrapped in digital light. The Calithians didn't know how to respond. They had never been spoken to like that. Not as subordinates, not as threats, just as beings capable of remembering. Across the stars, thousands of similar fragments were shared, quietly, no fanfare, no mass broadcast. Earth didn't call attention to itself. It let the message spread like a slow fire. We remember who you were. Do you? It was the beginning of a new kind of war. Not one of territory, but of truth. On the Drukhari homeworld, the backlash hit fast. Propaganda struggled to explain the loss. Their people had been told for generations that no force could challenge the Prime Fleet. But Earth had not only challenged, it had dominated, and then left. No loot, no prisoners, no broadcasts of triumph. Just silence. Drukhari citizens began questioning everything. If Earth didn't want conquest, what did they want? Why were they so dangerous? Why did their soldiers fight without screaming? Why did their ships destroy without taunting? That absence of emotional warfare broke the Drukhari more than any weapon. It meant Earth didn't hate them. They simply didn't fear them. In the diplomatic shadow spheres of the Orc Confederacy, another conversation was taking place. For centuries, smaller civilizations had quietly bent to Drukhari dominance. Not because they believed in it, but because no one else was strong enough to oppose it. Now, someone was. Within days of the Valoran event, over 43 independent planetary states initiated diplomatic feelers toward Earth. Some were formal. Others came as encoded pulses in old, forgotten languages. Earth responded to all of them the same way, with memory, fragments, names, images of lost cities and extinct ecosystems. Evidence recovered, authenticated, and shared freely. Earth wasn't building an empire. They were building a library of loss, and guarding it with warships. Inside the Arclight, Commander Rilland reviewed incoming signals. Most were diplomatic. Some were personal. One message came from a Dralathi survivor, a child, now an elder, whose species had been erased in the initial Drakari purges. She had never heard her people's language spoken aloud in her lifetime. Now Earth played it back to her, restored, clean, and carried on a narrow band beam across 12 sectors. Her reply was 3 words: "You brought us back." That, more than the battlefield victory, marked the turning point. Galactic empires that once ignored Earth began to reassess. Intelligence networks trawled for hidden technologies. Analysts demanded to know how Earth had outmaneuvered a species that had ruled war for centuries. They expected superweapons, secret alliances. Some believed Earth had unearthed ancient artifacts or AI gods. What they found was worse. Humanity had done it alone. No shortcuts, no stolen tech, no divine intervention. Just relentless preparation, simulation after simulation. Failures studied, losses learned from. They hadn't rushed to join the galactic stage. They had trained for the moment it turned hostile. And when the call came, they were ready. It was this realization, more than any battle statistic, that shifted the galactic balance. Because Earth wasn't building an army of conquest. They were preparing for the next cry for help. 2 weeks after the Prime Fleet's retreat, a signal was detected from the Gorthane expanse, an ancient sector long assumed dead. A buried relay station, automated and damaged, sent out a pulse. A call no one had heard in over 900 years. Earth answered in minutes. Not a warfleet this time, a recon vessel. Medical ships. AI-driven translators trained to restore dead tongues. And a message: "We heard you. We're coming." The response was slow, weak, fragmented, but real. Survivors, hiding underground. Descendants of a race nearly wiped from history. They wept at the sound of their own language. They didn't know Earth, had never heard of soul, but they didn't need to. They understood the message. Someone had come. Other powers watched, hesitant. Some feared Earth's rise. Others respected it. But none dared challenge it, not after Valora. Instead, something else began to spread. Ships once flagged under scattered. Nations began flying new symbols. Not Earth's, not Sol's, but Velora's, the emblem of the lost accord. Reclaimed and reborn, and behind it, Earth stood not as rulers, but as sentinels. The rebirth of the accord was not political. It was cultural, philosophical, built on the bones of what the galaxy had tried to forget. Built by humans who had once sent satellites into cold voids, whispering greetings in every known language, even before they left their own solar system. That instinct had never left them. They still answered calls. They just now had the power to do something about it. The Terran fleet did not expand endlessly. They didn't claim sectors or rewrite laws. They had a single standing protocol engraved into every core AI and reinforced in every officer's training. If you hear a call, you go. One by one, species long silent began to whisper again. Signals. In old frequencies, cries in forgotten formats, echoes from the edges of oblivion. And Earth answered each one, not as saviors, not as conquerors, but as the ones who refused to look away. In the dark, when silence stretched too long and despair took root, the last hope wasn't a myth or a prayer or a miracle. It was the sound of approaching engines, the hum of weapons charging, not to threaten, but to shield. The voice of a people who had turned their own pain into vigilance. And if you listened carefully, beneath the noise, beneath the static, one truth rang out: you are not alone. Not anymore.